Hi everyone, welcome to the Fox's Den. I'm Rick Mayston of Agent Fox, and I'm very glad to say that I'm interviewing an award-winning author today. He is someone that I'm going to be agenting in the future. He's got a new book out and he's going to tell us a lot about the book, but also a lot about his career. So a big welcome to DOUGIE BRIMSON. Hi Dougie.
Hello, I'm honoured to be speaking to you in this bizarre medium.
That's a great background you've got there, mate.
It is pretty awesome. I'm a bit of a Zoom virgin, so this is I'm quite impressed with myself.
Now I'm going to have to do something with the background I've got here. I've got one little logo, and then you've got all those books. So I'm going to have to sort that out for the future.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
first of all, how are you getting on in lockdown?
Lockdown's actually working okay for me. I mean, I've got I'm working on this new book, and I'm doing the as much promotion as I can for In the Know, which is this book to my left.
Yeah, which was released on May the 14th.
That came out on May the 14th. We were lucky in the fact that it wasn't delayed at all. Amazon managed to get it out on time, which was quite astonishing. And we were also selling direct from the publishers, Caffeine Nights. And so, yeah, we were really lucky. We haven't had a problem with it. The response has been brilliant. So, and it's actually given me an excuse to have to stay in and sit at a computer, even in this glorious weather.
And it's a third in a well-known trilogy, isn't it, of Billy Evans?
Yeah, the idea for this, I mean, the first book came out in 2000, so it's 20 years in the making, and really came about by a meeting with Linda LaPlante. I'd written 4 books, I think 4 or 5 books up to that point, non-fiction books about football and the culture of football, and she'd had an idea for an episode of one of her crime series, her police series, based around the subject of football hooliganism. And she contacted me and asked me to go in and talk to her and look over this outline. And I had one look through it and I said, look, I'm sorry, this is rubbish. And I explained why. It just wouldn't work. It made no sense really. And so she said, well, come up with something better. And this was Friday afternoon. She gave me the weekend. On the Monday, I went back with this outline of a plot. She loved it. Everyone loved it, except ITV, who refused to make it on the basis that it was about English football and English football hooligans, but it involved an element of xenophobia, a hint of racism in there. And she was, upset, annoyed, but she said, this is a great story. You should write it as a book. And I'd never done any fiction up to that point, but it's something that had kind of interested me. So I said, well, I'll write it, but if I do, I want a cover quote. And she said, that's fine. And I managed to persuade Headline, who was my publisher at that time, to do it. Took a while, but we did it. And that book was The Crew, the first in the series. And then a few years later, I had an idea for another book, because all my books, the fiction comes from an idea for an ending for a book. They all stem from that. They all stem from endings. All of my stories, and I'd had this idea. In fact, I had 2 ideas, which I thought I can wrap these together and make a pretty good story. And that book became Top Dog, which was the second in the series, because readers were asking me about this guy. What happened next? What happened next? You can't leave it at that. And so Top Dog came out. It did okay. We made a film of it, which I wrote as well. I adapted that, starring Leo Gregory and directed by Martin Kemp, the Spandau Ballet. And then a couple of years ago, people started asking me for another book, another Billy Evans book. And I was looking at all the stuff that was going on in terms of, Brexit and football and all these sorts of stuff. And I'd had some ideas for stuff. And I basically took about 4 or 5 different ideas from different projects and put them into this story, which again stems from the ending. I knew what the ending was going to be. And that book became In the Know.
And I take it, well, it's a no-brainer, really, isn't it, that this is going to be a film as well?
Well, we're talking about the film. I mean, Leo Gregory played Billy in Top Dog, and I'd met Leo, who was Bother in Green Street. That's how we first got together. I've mentioned to him about doing it. He said he will do it. I've had some interest in. I'm talking about an option for the film. I've got the bones of a script already written. So fingers crossed, but no one knows what's happening in this crazy lockdown time in regards to films.
No,
I hope so.
That's true. I think things are changing a little bit now. I've heard that some film crews are going to be allowed out again. I think the soaps are going to start filming again soon. Yeah. So I think things are easing up a little bit, but obviously it really depends on how sensible people are.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking. I'm working on a project with a producer in Hollywood at the moment, and I speak to her every night, and she says we're flat out in development things. There's just not enough hours in the day, so it's obviously coming, that return to work, but quite how it's gonna work out and how long it's gonna take, I have no idea.
All right, well, look, let's get back to your writing, because you're not exactly a traditional author. I think that's probably fair to say. Your first books were non-fiction, very different from anything published in that genre. Was that intentional, and how did you deal with that controversy that surrounded them?
Well, to be fair, I mean, I'd done 18 years in the military and the Air Force, and came out and ended up working as an extra on film and TV with my brother, rather than do an actual proper job, which was a bit crazy. And while we were doing that, Euro 96 was approaching, and there'd been a lot of talk about hooliganism and all stuff like that. And they'd been wheeling out the world of academia to tell us, we were all right-wing, broken-homed, racist sorts. And as lads who'd been going to football from the 70s, in the 60s in my case, we didn't recognize any of this. They weren't talking about a world that we knew. And we started to think there's a book here. There's an idea for a book, which is basically about 2 guys who used to go to football a lot, who understand what hooliganism and the culture of football fandom is about. And if we can write it and construct it in a way that appeals to guys like us, we might make some money. And that was the motivator, just to make money. And we knew if we could get it out before Euro 96, because we'd both been in front of a camera, albeit, in the background running around, we knew how we weren't fazed by that sort of stuff. We both had shaved heads because we did adverts and we were beating people up in the bill and stuff like that. So that was, one of the things we did. So we looked the part, we knew what we were talking about. We were quite prepared to go out, and sit in front of anybody and talk about our book and the subject. And we pitched the book to Headline. They were the only people we pitched it to. We'd never written anything before, didn't know any other authors, never even thought about writing anything up to that point. We pitched it to Headline, a bit of to in and fro in, and they offered us a deal. The book came out in March 96, just before the tournament. I mean, it was the perfect time. And we went everywhere. We were on Anne and Nick, we were on the BBC News, Radio 5, blah, blah, and everybody hated us. But we sat down and we talked quite eloquently about a subject we knew intimately. And the books are largely our opinion. Those 4 books, in fact, all my non-fiction books are football. Part research, part history, part my opinion.
So you must have surprised quite a lot of people with how eloquent you were. They probably had a preconception
Oh,
Too low.
yeah, they thought they were getting two, shaven-headed thugs in through the door, and they got two blokes. One who was who'd done 18 years in the military and was a Falklands veteran, and another one who was, very eloquent, knew his subjects, was quite prepared. We both remained calm, never phased by the attacks on us, and some of the attacks were quite fierce at times, but we just sat back and said our piece, and we explained it. As the tournament unfolded, everything we said was proved right. But we only thought we were going to do one book, because we thought if you write a book that sells, and everywhere we go really sold, it sold a lot, we thought we can retire forever then and just go football. And of course it doesn't work like that. And Headline came in and said, look, do you want to do another one of these? Because the format was the same. The structure and the format is quite well defined of those books. And we ended up doing 3 over about 2 years. And then Mainstream in Edinburgh approached us and said, do you want to do something for us?
I remember Bill, yeah.
Yeah, Bill. And he said, we want you to write our lead titles. And Eddie had an idea for a novel, which he did. And I wrote a book called The Geezer's Guide to Football, which was a parody about being a football fan. And they did really well. And then the Linda the Plant thing came about. And it was from The Crew, led into Green Street and all sorts of other stuff. And I've been kind of winging it ever since.
So how many books have you actually written now, and how many of those have been turned into films?
In the Know is my 16th. The only one that's been filmed so far is Top Dog, although we are talking about In the Know. And I've done 3 features in total, 3 award-winning features, I should say, as well.
Yeah.
And yet the funny thing is, I've sold a lot of books. I added it up in, overseas and stuff like that, and downloads. It's over 1 million books I've shifted.
That's incredibly impressive. It's very impressive. And a lot of people
but it's never, it's a bizarre thing. I still don't regard myself as a proper writer. I still haven't got a proper publishing deal.
Well, we're working on that, Dougie.
We're working on that, yeah. But I indie publish through Caffeine Nights, who are brilliant, because they kind of get the market. They get my market. And I know my market. I know who I'm writing for. And I've always, they've always been uppermost in my mind, because they're the ones who tell me what they want. And I'm a firm believer in giving people what they want as opposed to what I think they might like. I tried that with a couple of books and it didn't really work. Well,
what I think is really impressive about you is that it's not often you find someone who is both an author and a screenwriter. In my experience, a screenwriter has had to come in to write the screenplay for the book, whereas you do both. So how did the move to screenwriting come about? And did you find that transition a difficult one?
Well, funnily enough, it came about like most things that happened to me, by accident. At that time, and we're talking about 1998 probably, the football world, particularly the hooligan world and the lad world and the casual culture world, which is the scene allied to football, everything was done on the internet, on these secret forums, and the biggest forum of all was ITK, In the Know, which is where the title for this book came from. And someone messaged me, but everyone who was on there was using false names, because we all thought the police are watching, journalists are watching, and there've been lots of reports of things that have been on In the Know, the forum, appearing in papers and people getting arrested and all sorts of stuff. And someone messaged me and said that there's this bird talking about doing a hooligan film from America. You might want to have a chat. So I used a fake name. Messaged her.
70s language now, Dougie.
Well, yeah, sorry, I am 61, so you've got to give me some leeway.
Me too, exactly the same age.
Yeah, but So I got in touch with her using a false name and got to know her, sounded her out. And in the end, I said, look, she was talking about me writing this film for her with my false name. And then I said, look, you need to speak to this guy, Dougie Brimson. He's written all these books. He knows his stuff. Blah, blah, blah. No, I don't want to talk to him, she said. So, and in the end, after about 3 more weeks, I said, look, you've got to speak to him because I'm not going to talk no more. She said, I've already talked to him. Well, I knew she hadn't because it was me. So in the end, she did. And we got talking about the script. Yeah, and in the end, she just said, look, we're doing everything over the phone or whatever. Just come out to Hollywood for 10 days. We'll thrash the script out. And that's what we did. By the time I came back, we had the script pretty much fleshed out. And then she got nominated for an Oscar for a short movie. And then everybody was just throwing money at her. And Green Street was go, really, from then on.
Green Street was a huge film. So why was there never a novel adaptation?
It was a rights thing. Simple as that. I'd asked from day one that I wanted the literary rights to the story, and that was fine up to the point where they, for some reason, one of the American producers said, we want to bring another scriptwriter in. And even though everything that person did was dumped because it was ludicrous, they had a claim on the rights for the characters. And so, there were so many arguments going back and forth that in the end I said, like, it's just, I can't be bothered to do it, because by then Green Street was already out. And the kind of that window of opportunity had been missed. It was a shame because it would have been a good book, but
the politics got in the way of an opportunity.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. I learned a lot about the movie business from Green Street, most of which was bad.
Go on. At least
no, just the difference between the two. And this was the big thing. I found the transition to screenwriting really easy. I'd never even really read a script up until the time I started writing Green Street, and I realised I'm very adept at winging it when it comes to things. I think that's an RAF trait. And so what I did was, she'd said, have you ever written a script, or do you know about scripts? And I said, oh yeah, I've read loads and all this crap. I'd never read anything, never really seen one, only stuff we'd seen on set as extras. And so what I did, I came home and I thought the best way for me to learn about scripts is to read scripts while I'm watching films. So I put on Terminator 2, I'll always remember this, put on Terminator 2 and downloaded the script and read the script as I watched the movie. And it's a brilliant way to learn about structure and pace and all kinds of things. So I did that a few times, and then I kind of churned out a vomit draft for Green Street. But because most of my novels are dialogue driven anyway, because I'm not one of these people who writes flowery prose. It's not like Billy stepped out of his front door and there was a haze over the street and all this rubbish.
I can honestly say that's not the reason that people buy your books, but you've sold a million.
Yeah, exactly. And that comes back to me knowing my market. I know what they want. So it's like Billy steps out of his door. That's it. And the rest of it is my book. Someone once reviewed The Crew as saying it reads like a film script. And that's the biggest praise that I ever had for that book, because it's exactly what I wanted.
Well, that's the publishers, because if they think that the books that you're writing are going to go to film, then I think that's a lot better for them than all the flowery language, to be honest.
Well, yeah, and it's, like I say, it comes back. It's about everything to do with writing. I always say the most important person in publishing is the reader, because if they're not buying books, there is nothing. And we're seeing at the moment with the indie bookstores who are practically begging people to come through the doors. If you give your market what it wants, you've got a career. If you're trying to persuade them or guide them into what you think they should like, especially when you're talking about working class blokes, because they just want to be entertained. They just want to read something that they can relate to, that they can recognize, or even that they can put themselves into. Because they see that as they're reading, they see that film in their head. That's why you know, Top Dog was so successful. And if you can do that, I think you're laughing. And that's why I write the books in a way which allows the reader to kind of play that film out in their head as they're reading.
Well, I have to say that even without that massive book deal that you talk about, you do have an extremely large fan base, which is why I think it makes it easy for me finding you that book deal. You do have a massive fan base. What has surprised me, and maybe you can tell me a little bit about this, is why you're so popular in Russia, because you have a very, very big following in Russia.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I mean, I was in the military through the Cold War, so Russia was always the enemy. And then out of the blue, I got this phone call from the British consulate in St. Petersburg, asking me if I'd like to go. Oh no, it was from the British Council in London, asking me if I'd like to go on a literary tour to Russia. And I'm like, well, why would you ever turn that down? What an experience. And it was, I think this was 2003, 2004. There was myself, Irving Welsh, and an author called Isabel Wolfe. And we went out, and what an experience. I mean, it's just astonishing. But I went out there in the mistaken belief that I was going out to talk about The Crew and all my other books. And why I'd been invited was because my publisher at that time, who was called Amphora, the publisher's wife had been on a beach and read a book I'd written called Billy's Log, which was basically the lad's Bridget Jones. You know, it's just right. a lad's love story written in that same kind of thing. It's a great book, very funny. And she'd read it on a beach, and she turned to her husband, and he told me this. She turned to him and said, "You have to publish this book in Russian." And he said, "Oh, okay, I'll leave it." And she said, "No, if you don't publish this book, I will divorce you, because that's how much I love this book." So I went out there thinking I'm going to be talking about hooligan stuff. And I went out really talking about Billy's Log. And but Amphora ended up taking all my books, and I've been back to Russia about 4 times now. It's fantastic. It's just like Russia. Authors are a big deal in Russia, and apparently I'm quite a big deal. So it's really nice. But as an ex-serviceman, it's very odd. I mean, the second day I was there, they took us to the museum in the Kremlin, and I literally had a meltdown because I was in this room with all these big guys dressed in black, walking around, and it just freaked me out completely. Very strange experience. But I have, every time I go there is an experience. I can
see how proud you are of this, and you should.
I love it out there.
There are very few authors that have cracked that market, I think. And again, it will be superb for a publisher if they know that your fan base spreads far and wide. And Russia is one that maybe they wouldn't have thought of. So
yeah, I'm big in East Europe. It's very strange.
So it's all of Eastern Europe then. It's not just
apparently
Russia.
So. I've been out to Belarus a couple of times. That's an experience. That's a fantastic country, Belarus. Absolutely fantastic. And it's just weird. I have people come to London who say, "We're in London. Can you sign my books? Can we meet so you can sign all my books?" And they've got this big pile of hardbacks, and I have to go to pubs and sign their books. It's really.
We'll have to make sure that we get this interview out to them then, because they'll love the shout out. So tell us a little bit more, because in the Know is the book that's out now, and has been released for a week. I'm taking it's all the bookshops are closed, but readily available on Amazon, I'm sure.
The first print run sold out. I don't know how many that was. It was a few thousand. That sold out already. So that's done all right. The reviews are all solid. I mean, the story, as I said, was inspired by an idea I'd had about what the story is about society and how it reacts, the working class in particular, and how it reacts to the loss of faith in the judiciary, and what they can do. And in effect, in many ways, it's a vigilante story, but it's driven by my character, Billy Evans, who has absolutely no regard for the law whatsoever. And it's about how he kind of is offered this opportunity to get the one thing he craves, which is power and influence. And it features bent journalists, bent politicians, bent policemen. And the story is kind of, the fuel for the story is Brexit, is the move towards leaving the EU and the fears about the right wing and stuff like that, which Billy exploits. And it's just a great story. And it's very fast paced, non-stop pace. Someone reviewed it the other day and they said, Brimson writes at breakneck speed and he'll drag you along for the entire journey, which I thought was really smart.
That's great.
It's a great quote.
Really lovely. And the fact that it's sold out of its first print run, I think is testament to how much people love Billy Evans.
What surprised me about it is how many women are reading it.
Yeah, no, I heard about this. That is surprising, but I've heard that directly as well. So
I think part of it is because Billy is kind of a likable rogue. Another reviewer described it as Peaky Blinders set in modern day Essex, in the underbelly of Essex, which is a great review, a great quote. But it's because he is a likable rogue. You know, it's all about his family, and he's kind of that underpins everything.
Well, they make the best characters. So great book to read in lockdown and beyond. So hopefully it will get reprinted and people can buy this.
It's already being reprinted, believe
Excellent.
me.
Excellent news. So moving on, because you talked about your military background. So a bit surprising you've never really written about the military, but now I'm very happy to say, as your agent, you have.
Yeah, it's the reason I've never done anything up to now is in the Air Force, your life revolves around aeroplanes, alcohol, and women generally, and parties and hotels. So they'll have you believe it's not really like that. But I didn't really have a career which kind of featured any drama. Well, lots of drama, but not drama that you kind of wrap into a story. But I'd always wanted to do something, and a lot of lads I'd known in the RAF and vets I know would say, you should write something, particularly about the Falklands. They're all fascinated by the Falklands. But I didn't think I had the right to do that. Certainly not the Falklands. There's plenty of people written books about the Falklands which are better than I could ever do. But I came up with this idea a few years ago for a film called Three Greens. And I wrote a script, pitched it out. It's currently with a company called M Films, who are financing. Lockdown isn't helping us at the moment, to be fair. We got very, very close of having it greenlit last year. Gerard Butler was poised to sign on the line as the lead character, and backed away at the last minute and signed to do another one of these London thingy films, someone blowing something up somewhere else, because he wanted a film in America. But we go, we're persisting. But I'd always wanted, I knew there was a novel in this story because it's a great story. And so I'm kind of 2/3 of the way through that in a minute.
Well, speaking really selfishly, the fact that there's already talks on the film makes my job a hell of a lot easier. I actually wish that all my authors were like you. If there were films in the making of books that haven't yet gone to the publisher, that would be
Well,
Absolutely.
it's like that because I've never had an agent. You know, I've never been able to find despite 16 books.
Why has it taken us this long to get together, Dougie?
I mean, we've known each other a long time. You would
We
never
have,
take
but
me on.
I think I just took it for granted you had an agent because I
I've never been able to find anyone to take me on. It's not like I don't sell books.
Yeah,
Um,
you know that I had dark hair when I met you, so
yeah.
so
I
that's
had hair when I met you, didn't I? I don't remember. But it's very strange. It's very strange. And so because I've done everything myself, and I only work on projects that I enjoy. So, which is why I've got quite a varied backlist. I mean, I've got non-fiction, I've got 3 thrillers, I've got 4 comedy novels on my backlist, all of which have sold well as well. I don't know, maybe that's the problem. I don't fit into and I do the screenwriting, of course. So I don't, it's because I'm too complicated, but because I've had to do it all myself, I've done it all myself. And so I've done what comes naturally. And because I'm not a normal writer, I don't know any other writers really, even now. I don't even know any other screenwriters. It's just that I think I've got a handle on what people like and I know how to get to them.
Well, listen, I think that people love your books. They love the films that come out of your books. I know they're going to enjoy this new one, In the Know. I also know they're going to enjoy the first one that I will be agenting, which is 3 Greens. But at the moment, it's In the Know that you've got out. It came out on the 14th of May. Dougie, I wish you every success with that. I think you really deserve it. You've got such a large fan base for having so little promotion, really, from up until now.
Don't get
And
me started on that.
Self-promoted in a way that that I think is excellent, and I'm incredibly impressed with it. And I'm very, very glad to be agenting you now. So look, thank you very much. I know you've been doing a lot of interviews, and you've been doing some of them by Zoom. So mine's by no means the first. I doubt whether it will be the last. But I look forward to working with you, mate. And as I say, I wish you every success with this book, and stay safe, because
Thank you very much.
it's important during this time. And
Yeah,
so I love that background. So keep that for your other interviews as well.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Dougie Brimson.
Thank you.
Bye.
Is that all right?